northeastern Ukraine. I was having some trouble hearing Nick. I don't know how that was for our viewers.
For the Russian Federation, but with
Putin delivered a message of war in total disdain.
The Donbass republics and in Ukraine.
People staring at their phones, discussing this. Really incredulous that after all these months of build-up, this is now actually happening. You saw people in uniforms, people from fire brigade, other kind of government emergency services stocking up on coffee, cigarettes.
Republic says Ukrainian soldiers are now abandoning their... Ukrainian military command posts are reportedly coming under rocket attack as well.
Also the families and you know, it'll happen. Technology transfer, she mentioned. This is, of course, also big. Oil exports from Russia will be not happening, I assume. And there's many other things. The U.S. as well as the European Union, in strong and close coordination, have already in the drawer, basically, to pull out and to present tomorrow. And make no mistake, I think there's even then no.
And just a reminder, you are watching special coverage from DW News live from Berlin. We're covering the Russian attack on Ukraine. Russia has indeed launched a military assault on Ukraine, hitting targets across the country. U.S. President Joe Biden has condemned the attack as unjustified and unprovoked. Here in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz said it was a terrible day for Ukraine and a dark day for Europe. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the move in an unscheduled television address shortly before 6 a.m. Moscow time. He warned the world that any attempt to interfere would lead to, quote, consequences you have never seen. Within minutes, explosions were reported in cities across Ukraine, including Odessa, Kharkiv, Kramatorsk, Mariupol, and Kiev. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky said it was a full-scale invasion and that Russia was attacking military infrastructure throughout the country, as well as border guards. He urged citizens not to panic and to stay indoors. Let's bring in DW correspondent Nick Conley here. We have a team on the ground in Ukraine. Nick is part of that. He is in the northeast of the country. Nick, tell us where you are and what's happening around you.
We're traveling through Kharkiv Oblast, Kharkiv region, which is the last region before Donbass. If you look kind of west to east, Kharkiv is Ukraine's second biggest city. I was meant to be heading to Donbass today and left my train a bit earlier in a small town where the initial response was one of kind of dazed surprise and kind of shock. I remember just the first 2 hours of dawn came, people staring at their phones, discussing this, really incredulous that after all these months of build-up, this is now actually happening. You saw people in uniforms, people from fire brigade, other kind of government emergency services stocking up on coffee, cigarettes, and sugar, getting in jeeps and trucks and heading east. A bit later, you saw ordinary residents kind of coming out, trying to withdraw cash from banks, huge queues outside the banks, same outside petrol stations with the fuel, but no panic so far. People trying to make preparations, trying to get essential supplies, but people staying more or less calm, not raising voices, no conflict. I think this is a country that has seen warfare for the past 8 years in Donbass, and so people are, as best they can, be prepared, although this is obviously seemingly a Russian incursion on a scale quite unlike anything they've seen before.
Tell us more about that scale, Nick, because we're having a difficult time getting an idea of exactly what has been targeted and what the state of the development in this military exercise or this military attack is. We're looking at pictures right now of flames and smoke rising above what I'm told is a military airport.
Local residents told me they'd heard explosions early in the morning from what they thought was a nearby Ukrainian military airbase. They assumed those were Russian airstrikes or missile strikes. And we definitely have messages and reports of similar attacks on Ukraine from sending in supplies to reinforce the Ukrainian army with eastern countries. The really big difference this time is that it's not just restricted to the east. It seems like troops are also crossing in the north and also from Belarus and from the south, from Russia and Crimea. So this is really a very difficult situation for Ukraine to deal with forces attacking on such a huge scale, on such a big front. All those attacks
Okay. That was our correspondent Nick Connolly there in northeastern Ukraine. I was having some trouble hearing Nick. I don't know how that was for our viewers. I'm told we have our
devastating for Ukraine, not only tragic for the Russian Federation, but with an impact we cannot even foresee.
Well, the announcement that Russia authorised troops came halfway through that emergency meeting. Here's the moment when the US ambassador found out the news.
At the exact time as we are gathered in the council seeking peace, Putin delivered a message of war in total disdain for the responsibility of this council. This is a grave emergency. The council will need to act, and we will put a resolution on the table tomorrow. As President Biden is responsible for the death and destruction this attack will bring.
And further to that, Stan, at that UN Security Council meeting, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UN addressed the Russian president of the UN Security Council, telling him that he needed to call the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, that he could excuse himself from the meeting and step outside. He had a smartphone.
Roman Kozarov in Donetsk, thank you very much to both of you. Now, Ukraine's President Zelensky said that martial law is being imposed in Ukraine and that Ukraine's military infrastructure is under attack. He earlier made an emotional appeal to the population of both countries and said that he had tried to call President Vladimir Putin, but no one had answered him. Ukraine's foreign ministry, meanwhile, says Russia has unleashed a war against Ukraine. Meanwhile, NATO representatives are to convene an emergency meeting. Well, earlier, my colleague Peter Scott discussed Russia's special military operation with former Pentagon security analyst Michael Maloof. He says that a military operation was an option of last resort.
Mr. Putin warned about how he was concerned about the security of the Federation with the encroachment of NATO and the possibility of assistance to Ukraine with NATO assistance. And that's probably why Mr. Putin decided to take action, because that was the last resort. The implementation of Minsk II, Ukraine was not interested. Washington basically is once again it coerced Ukrainian leadership not to go along with it, and again the leadership of the country is not in control of its own destiny. It's really controlled from the outside, and this was another manifestation of that. There was an agreement, and it's just one more agreement in a whole list of agreements that were ignored or violated, and Mr. Putin clearly felt that he was left with no other choice.
Do you expect that to continue or to ramp up given this development?
Well, it's going to be difficult to provide any more assistance if the country is under attack already. I think it's going to be difficult to move any more supplies in unless certain corridors are. But I think Mr. Putin has probably already calculated that. His military strategists have already figured that out and basically will cut off that logistical support very rapidly.
According to local reports, explosions can be heard across Ukraine. Residents say blasts have rocked the city of Kharkov, which is in the east. Explosions have also been reported in the area of Borisopol Airport near Kiev. And Ukrainian military command posts are reportedly coming under rocket attack as well. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry has denied all claims of rocket and air attacks on Ukrainian cities. A ministry spokesperson said that there are no threats to the civilian population in Ukraine, as high-precision weapons are incapacitating military infrastructure, including air defense facilities. The ministry says Ukrainian soldiers and military units are abandoning their positions and added that those giving up their arms aren't being under strikes. Russia also denies Ukraine's reports of losses among planes and armoured vehicles. Well, a recap now of the main developments this morning. Vladimir Putin announced a military operation in Donbass during an address to the nation early this morning. The president said there would be no occupation of Ukrainian territory. He also called for Ukrainian troops to lay down their weapons. He says Russia's goal is to bring justice to those who committed numerous crimes against civilians, including Russian citizens. This comes after the People's Republics of Donbass turned to Russia for military assistance. Well, meanwhile, reports have come in that artillery can be heard in the Donbass republics and in Ukraine. Locals say that the sounds of explosions can be heard in the area of Borisopol Airport near Kiev. Ukrainian military command posts, air force control centers, airfields in Kiev and Kharkov have all been hit by rocket attacks, reports say. And there are also reports of aerial bombardments. Martial law has been imposed in Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry denies all the claims of rocket and air attacks on Ukrainian cities. The ministry adds that there are no threats to the civilian population in Ukraine. Well, meanwhile, 12 airports across southern Russia have been closed until March the 2nd. And NATO is planning to hold an urgent meeting later today. The Lugansk Republic says Ukrainian soldiers are now abandoning their positions. Well, for those of you just joining us, you're watching RT International with me, Nikki Aaron, and Saskia Taylor. We've got a lot to update you on regarding the situation in Ukraine this morning. Do stay with us.
The question is just how things evolve by the minute even, and what that actually will mean to the developing status quo of this country.
Funny, I'm just looking at those at the pictures behind you. We're seeing automobiles running through the streets, apparently as normal. I'm seeing reports that the
naval port
that some of the
on the Black Sea, which there are confirmed.
With military infrastructure that is being attacked nationwide.
Three to begin with.
Я за надзвичайний стан. Ну, в такий час, що його, мабуть, треба вводити, і тим більше зараз на тих регіонах, де йде війна, Донецька і Луганська область. Там треба. Ну, тут, мабуть, ще рано, може, трошки, але теж треба.
О признании Донецкой Народной Республики. Президент Российской Федерации Владимир Владимирович Путин
Я не думаю, что это что-то для обычных людей сильно изменит.
Внимание, расчет. Пуск. Есть пуск.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has authorized and ordered a military operation in the Donbas region in Ukraine, a sign that the full-scale invasion of Ukraine may be underway. Several journalists on the ground in Kiev have reported hearing loud explosions rock the Ukrainian capital.
Big explosions taking place in Kiev right now.
There are as yet unconfirmed reports emerging of more explosions elsewhere in the country, including the crucial port city of Odessa. Putin warned other countries that any attempt to interfere with the Russian action would lead to consequences they have never seen. Thousands of Russian troops and vehicles have already crossed the border, with a string of Western nations, including Australia, imposing harsh sanctions in response. Ukraine has also ordered an estimated 3 million citizens currently living in Russia to return home immediately over fears of looming violence.